rise again. Life has a way of knocking us down. Maybe it's a failed relationship, the loss of a loved one, a financial setback, or a dream that seems out of reach. In those moments, it's tempting to stay down, overwhelmed by the weight of disappointment and despair. But today, I want to remind you, you can rise again. God has a plan beyond the fall. The Bible is full of stories of people who fell but didn't stay down. One such story is that of Peter. Peter, the disciple who boldly declared he would never deny Jesus, fell hard when he did exactly that, not once but 3 times. Afterward, he wept bitterly, consumed by guilt and shame. But Jesus wasn't done with Peter. After the resurrection, Jesus sought him out, restored him, and empowered him to preach the gospel at Pentecost, where thousands were saved. Peter's fall wasn't the end. It was the setup for a greater rise. Proverbs 24:16 reminds us, "For though the righteous fall 7 times, they rise again." Your fall is not final because God's purpose for your life is greater than your failure. Rising again requires perspective. When we fall, it's easy to focus on the pain, the loss, or the mistake. But rising again requires shifting our perspective from what we've lost to what God can do. Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, could have given up, consumed by bitterness. Instead, he trusted God and rose from being a prisoner to becoming a ruler in Egypt. Joseph told his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis 50:20. What if the fall you're facing right now is setting you up for a comeback that will glorify God and bless others? Get back up, even if it's hard. Rising again is not always easy. It takes courage, faith, and perseverance. It means silencing the voice of doubt and fear and listening to the voice of God who says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians 12:9. When I faced a personal loss, I remember feeling like the ground had been pulled from beneath me. I wanted to give up, but God reminded me that He still had a purpose for my life. I leaned into prayer, scripture, and the support of others, and step by step, I began to rise. You may feel like you've been knocked down too many times, but with God's strength, you can get back up one more time. God gives us the power to overcome. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you, Romans 8:11. This means that no matter how deep the pit you've fallen into, God's power can lift you out. When the prodigal son hit rock bottom, living among pigs and longing for their food, he could have stayed there in shame. Instead, he made a decision to rise, saying, "I will arise and go to my father." Luke 15:18. And what happened? His father ran to him, embraced him, and restored him. God is waiting for you to rise and come to Him. He's ready to restore you, no matter how far you've fallen. Rising again glorifies God. When we rise from the ashes of defeat, it's a testimony of God's grace and power. Your story of resilience can inspire someone else to rise. Micah 7:8 says, "Do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light." When you rise again, you show the world that God's light shines even in the darkest moments. You were made to rise. As I close, I want to remind you, you were not created to stay down. You were created to rise, to overcome, and to walk in the purpose God has for you. No matter what has knocked you down, God's hand is outstretched, ready to lift you. Trust Him, lean into His strength, and take the first step to rise again. Your best days are still ahead. May God give you the courage to rise again.